The door burst open 10 minutes after they told me I couldn't come in. My sister-in-law Denise was standing on the porch with one hand on the frame and the other pressed flat against her blouse. Not from grief. From fear. Her face had changed so completely that for a second I almost didn't recognize her. Behind her in the front room of my father-in-law's house, voices had stopped. No one was arguing anymore. No one was explaining. No one was pretending they had everything under control. Denise looked at me like she had seen something inside that house she could not put back where it came from. Then she said, "Ma'am, we need you inside, now." Ma'am? Not Rachel. Not sweetheart. Not Grant's wife. Ma'am. That was how quickly status changes when people realize they opened the wrong thing. I looked past her shoulder. The dining room table was covered with folders, envelopes, and old photographs. A lawyer stood near the fireplace, still holding a document in both hands. My husband Grant was sitting with his elbows on his knees. His mother was pale. And on the table in the center of all of them lay the sealed packet they had insisted was my father-in-law's will. Only it wasn't. I stepped toward the threshold. No one stopped me this time. But that was not where the story began. It began 20 minutes earlier on that same porch, with Denise blocking the doorway in a navy dress and pearl earrings, looking like she had been waiting for me. "Rachel," she said, not greeting me. Naming the problem. I stood on the front step with my coat folded over one arm and a covered dish in my other hand. Lemon bars. My father-in-law's favorite. I had made them the night before because grief does strange things to women like me. It sends us into the kitchen. It makes us measure sugar while our hands shake. It makes us bring food to houses where no one asked for it because showing up with something useful feels safer than showing up with need. "Hi, Denise," I said. She glanced at the dish, then back at me. Her expression didn't soften. "We're just keeping this to family today." The sentence came out clean. Prepared. Like linen pulled tight over a table. Behind her I could hear low voices. My husband's family. The Whitakers. Gathered inside to go through his father's estate papers. Grant had told me to come. Not warmly. Not firmly. Just quietly that morning while tying his tie in our bedroom. "Dad would have wanted you there," he said. I believed him. That was my first mistake. Not because it wasn't true. Because wanting is not the same as protecting. I shifted the dish slightly in my hands. "I'm here with Grant," I said. Denise's mouth tightened. "Grant is already inside." That detail landed with more weight than it should have. Already inside. Not coming out. Not standing beside me. Not unaware. Inside. I looked past her again. The front hall was dim. Same family photographs on the wall. Same brass umbrella stand by the door. Same grandfather clock that had been 5 minutes slow for years because my father-in-law Harold said punctual clocks made people anxious. Harold Whitaker had been dead for 6 days. A stroke. Fast. At home. In the garden shed of all places where he had been sorting old tools for a church rummage sale. He was 74. Not young. Not old enough. His death had cracked something open in that family, though not in the way grief usually does. It had exposed structure. Who called the funeral home? Who spoke to the pastor? Who knew where the insurance cards were? Who had keys? Who had opinions? Who believed opinions were authority? I had been in that house 3 times that week. I brought soup. Drove Elaine to the florist. Sat with Grant in the driveway when he couldn't bring himself to go in. Harold had been kind to me. Not performative. Not sentimental. Kind. The quiet kind. He remembered how I took coffee. Asked about my work. Noticed when I stayed too long in the kitchen and said, "Sit down, Rachel. You're not staff." That sentence stayed with me. Maybe because no one else in that family ever said anything like it. Now his daughter stood at the door of his house telling me I was not family. Denise looked down at the covered dish again. "You can leave that," she said. That was the part that nearly made me laugh. Not because it was funny. Because it was perfect. I could leave the food. Not myself. I looked at her. "I'll wait for Grant." Her face shifted. A small flicker. Discomfort, not guilt. "He knows we're starting." I nodded slowly. "Does he know I'm outside?" She didn't answer. That was answer enough. Behind her, someone called, "Denise." Her shoulders stiffened. She turned her head slightly. "I'll be right there." Then back to me. Her voice lowered. "You can't come in." A pause. Then, "Family only." There it was. No legal language. No soft phrasing. No, it's complicated. Just the door, the line, and me outside it. I looked down at the dish in my hands. The foil was still warm. A small bead of condensation had gathered near the edge. I had carried it carefully from the car, carefully up the walk, carefully to a threshold where it was more welcome than I was. I held it out. Denise reached for it. Then I changed my mind. Not dramatically. Just enough. I pulled it back. "I'll keep it," I said. Her eyes narrowed slightly. Not anger. Surprise. Then she stepped back and began to close the door. Through the narrowing gap, I saw Elaine in the living room. Black dress. Pearls. Handkerchief folded in one hand. She looked toward me. Not long. Just enough. Then looked away. Grant sat beside her. He saw me. I know he did. His hand moved once on his knee. Not rising. Not speaking. Just moving. Then the door closed. Not slammed. Closed. That was worse. A slammed door gives you anger. A closed door gives you decision. I stood on the porch for a moment with the lemon bars in my hands. The neighborhood was quiet. Well-kept lawns. 2 cars parked along the curb. A wreath on the Whitakers' front door that still said "Blessed Home" in painted script. Across the street, a woman walked a small white dog and pretended not to notice me. People pretend a lot in suburbs. It keeps the hedges even. I stepped off the porch, walked to my car, opened the back door, placed the dish carefully on the seat. Then I sat in the driver's seat. But I didn't start the engine. That mattered. Leaving would have made their version complete. Waiting gave me time to understand it. I could hear muffled voices through the closed windows of the house. Not clearly. Just tones. Denise's sharper one. Elaine's softer but firmer. A male voice I didn't recognize, probably the attorney. Grant's voice once. Low. Then gone. I held my phone in my lap. No messages. No call from my husband. No apology from the porch. Nothing. That silence was familiar. It was the same silence from family dinners when Elaine corrected how I served coffee. The same silence when Denise joked that I had married up emotionally and geographically. The same silence when Harold was the only one who ever pushed back. Leave her be, he would say. Not loudly. Never dramatically. Just enough. Harold understood boundaries. Maybe because he had spent his life watching people cross them quietly. 10 minutes passed. Maybe less. Maybe more. Time moves strangely when you are waiting outside a house you have been told you do not belong in. Then the voices inside changed. Not louder. Sharper. The kind of sound that comes when certainty breaks. A chair scraped. Someone said, "That can't be right." Then another voice. "The attorneys, I think. I need Mrs. Whitaker's daughter-in-law." A pause. Then Denise. "She's outside." Silence. Then the front door opened. Fast. Too fast for decorum. Denise appeared again. Pearls still in place. Face no longer composed. And this time she didn't stand in the doorway to block me. She held it open. I didn't stand up right away. That was the first change. 10 minutes earlier I would have moved the moment the door opened. Out of reflex. Out of habit. Now I watched her. Denise stood on the threshold, one hand still gripping the frame. Her nails were pressed flat against the wood. Too tight? Her breathing slightly uneven. She wasn't composed anymore. That mattered. Because people like Denise don't lose composure unless something has shifted beyond their control. "Rachel," she said again. Not sharp this time. Not defensive. Just direct. I stepped out of the car. Closed the door behind me. No rush. No hesitation. Just movement. The gravel under my shoes sounded louder than usual. Small details get sharper when the structure changes. As I reached the porch, Denise stepped aside. Fully. No partial movement. No lingering claim over the space. That was new. I crossed the threshold. And this time, No one stopped me. The house felt different from the inside. Not because it had changed. Because the arrangement had the same furniture, the same photographs, the same clock ticking 5 minutes slow. But the air held something else now. Not grief. Not tension. Uncertainty. That's harder to manage. In the living room, everyone turned toward me. Not all at once, but close enough. Elaine stood near the fireplace, her hand still holding that folded handkerchief. But she wasn't using it. Grant was seated, but he had shifted forward. Elbows off his knees now. Hands clasped together. That meant he was thinking. The attorney stood near the dining table. A man in his late 50s. Gray suit. Reading glasses lowered slightly on his nose. He looked at me as if I had just become relevant. Mrs. Whitaker, he said. That was how they addressed me in documents. Not in rooms. Yes, I replied. He nodded. Thank you for coming in. I almost smiled. Not because it was ironic. Because it was accurate. They had not asked me to come. They had needed me to. I stepped closer to the table. The papers were spread out now. Not neatly. Shifted. Moved. Rearranged. That tells you something happened. A disruption. A break in expectation. What is this? I asked. Not confrontational. Not confused. Just direct. The attorney glanced at Elaine. Then back at me. This is not a standard will, he said. Elaine's jaw tightened slightly. Not in disagreement. In adjustment. We thought it was, she added. That we carried weight. Family assumption. Shared misunderstanding. Grant stood then. Finally. Not to intervene. To be present. Rachel, he said. My name sounded different now. Not soft. Not careful. Grounded. I looked at him. Didn't respond. Because his position in this moment mattered more than his tone. What they opened, he continued, is a conditional trust. The words landed quietly. Not dramatic, but precise. The attorney stepped forward. There are provisions tied to administration, he said. Specific conditions that must be met before anything proceeds. I nodded once. Go on. He adjusted the document in his hands. There is a named executor. A pause. Then, and that executor is you. Silence. Not shock. Not disbelief. Just stillness. Because now everything aligned. Not suddenly. Clearly. I looked down at the papers. Not to confirm. To observe. The signature. Harold Whitaker. Clean. Intentional. Dated 3 years ago. Before the first quiet tension between me and Denise. Before Elaine had started reorganizing holidays around what made sense. Before Grant had learned to stay quiet instead of standing beside me. Harold had known something. Not everything, but enough. Why, Denise said. Not to me. To the room. To the situation. The attorney didn't answer her. He looked at me. Your father-in-law made specific instructions, he said. They involve how the estate is reviewed and distributed. I nodded. And they require my presence. Yes. Not optional. Not symbolic. Required. That word settled into the room. I could feel it in the way everyone stood. The way no one interrupted. The way the space shifted around me. Elaine stepped closer. Not too close. Just enough. We didn't know, she said. Her voice was steady. But something underneath it had changed. I believe you, I replied. That mattered. Not as forgiveness. As clarity. Because intention doesn't change outcome. But acknowledging it removes resistance. Grant moved to stand beside me. Not in front. Not behind. Beside. That was new. He didn't touch me. Didn't speak again. Just stood there. That mattered more than anything he could have said. What does this mean? He asked the attorney. The attorney looked at me first. Then answered. It means we proceed under her direction. Not Elaine. Not Denise. Not Grant. Me. Silence again. Not heavy. Defined. Denise crossed her arms. A small movement. Defensive. Not aggressive. What does she have to do? She asked. Again, not to me. Around me. The attorney responded calmly. She will review the documents, confirm compliance with the trust conditions, and determine next steps. I looked at the table, at the papers, at the arrangement that had been set before I arrived, and then disrupted the moment I stepped inside. This wasn't about inheritance. Not fully. It was about structure, and Harold had understood that better than anyone in this room. I reached out, placed my hand lightly on the document, not claiming it, not performing, just present. "I'll need time," I said. The attorney nodded. "Of course." Elaine opened her mouth, closed it, because this wasn't her position anymore. Denise shifted again, uncertain, not angry. That comes later. This was something else. Recognition. Grant looked at me, waited, for direction, for response, for something. I didn't give it. Not yet. Because the most important shift had already happened. I wasn't being let in anymore. I was being waited on. And that changes everything. No one spoke for a moment after I said I needed time. That silence mattered. Not because it was uncomfortable, because no one knew how to move without direction. 10 minutes earlier, they had been moving around the table with quiet authority. Papers opened, folders sorted, assumptions guiding every decision. Now, everything paused. The attorney cleared his throat. Not to interrupt. To mark a transition. "We can proceed slowly," he said. "Review each section." He looked at me again. Not at Elaine. Not at Grant. At me. That was new. I nodded once. "Start from the beginning." He adjusted his glasses, lifted the top document. "This trust was established 3 years ago," he said. "Primary assets are held under conditional distribution." He spoke clearly, not rushing, but I could feel something beneath his tone. Caution. Because even he hadn't expected this. Not fully. "What kind of conditions?" I asked. He glanced down at the page, then back up. "Behavioral and administrative." That was specific. More specific than most trusts. Elaine shifted slightly. "Harold liked to be particular," she said. I didn't respond. Because that wasn't explanation. That was positioning. The attorney continued. "There are clauses tied to family cooperation," he said. "Attendance at key reviews. Agreement on property decisions. Shared responsibility in liquidation or retention." I listened. Not emotionally. Structurally. Because this wasn't about money. It was about control. And Harold had not trusted the default arrangement. That was clear now. "Who defines cooperation?" I asked. The attorney paused. Then, the executor. He didn't soften it. Didn't redirect it. Just stated it. Denise let out a small breath. Not loud, but noticeable. Grant didn't move. Still beside me. Still quiet. That mattered. Because he was choosing not to fill the space. For the first time. "Continue," I said. The attorney flipped to the next page. "There is also a provision regarding primary residence," he said. Elaine's hand tightened slightly around the handkerchief. "That detail did not escape me. The home is not to be sold," he continued. "Unless all parties agree?" A pause. Then, "And the executor confirms the agreement is not coerced." That word landed. Coerced. Not common in family documents. But Harold had included it. That told me everything. He had seen something. Not necessarily actions. Patterns. That's what people like him notice. The way voices shift. The way decisions get made when one person speaks first. The way silence can be used to guide outcomes. I looked at Elaine. She held my gaze. Didn't look away. But she didn't speak either. That was also new. Denise stepped forward. "Are you saying we can't make decisions without her?" she asked. The attorney didn't answer her. He looked at me. That was the pattern now. Everything passed through me. "Yes," I said. Her expression tightened. Not anger. Not yet. Adjustment. "We've already discussed several things," she said. "I'm sure you have." That was enough. Not dismissive. Not confrontational. Just boundary. Grant shifted slightly beside me. A small movement. Then stillness again. He was holding position. That mattered. The attorney continued. There is also a clause regarding documentation review, he said. Specifically, he stopped, looked down at the page, then back up. As it relates to previous financial transfers. Elaine's shoulders moved slightly. Barely visible, but there. What kind of transfers, I asked. He hesitated. Just a second. Then, large discretionary withdrawals over the past 5 years. Silence. Not confusion. Recognition. Denise spoke first. That's normal, she said. Dad managed his own accounts. I didn't look at her. I kept my focus on the attorney. Were they documented, I asked? Another pause. Then, not all of them. That shifted the room again. Not loudly. Not dramatically. But completely. Because now this wasn't just about structure. It was about accountability. I looked down at the document again. At Harold's signature. At the clarity in his handwriting. He had known enough to build this. Enough to anticipate what might happen after he was gone. That takes a certain kind of awareness. Not suspicion. Observation. I placed my hand flat on the table. Not pressing. Just grounding. We'll review everything I said? No emphasis. No authority in tone. Just direction. The attorney nodded immediately. Of course. Elaine took a small step closer. Rachel, she said. I looked at her. Not away. Not past. At her. We didn't hide anything, she said. I held her gaze. I didn't say you did. That stopped her. Because defense without accusation reveals its own weight. Denise crossed her arms again. Then why is this even an issue, she asked. I turned my head slightly. Just enough to acknowledge her. Because it exists, I said. Nothing more. Nothing less. Grant exhaled quietly beside me. Not relief. Recognition. The attorney closed the folder gently. We can pause here, he said. Resume once you've had time to review. He was giving me space. Not them. That distinction mattered. I nodded. Yes. The room remained still. No one rushed to speak. No one filled the silence. Because they were waiting now. Not for the document. For me. And that was the shift. The real one. Not when they called me inside. Not when they said my name. When they stopped moving without me. That's when control changes. Not loudly. Quietly. Through pause. Through attention. Through who gets looked at when the next step isn't clear. I gathered the documents. Carefully. Not hurried. Not possessive. Just intentional. Grant stepped slightly closer. Still not touching me. But aligned. That mattered. Elaine watched. Denise watched. The attorney watched. And no one told me what to do next. Because now, that wasn't their role anymore. I didn't sit down with them to review the documents. That was the first decision I made. Not dramatic. Not announced. I simply gathered the folders, aligned the edges, and held them in my hands. I'll take these home, I said. No emphasis. No explanation. Just direction. The attorney nodded immediately. That's appropriate. Elaine inhaled slightly. Not sharply. But enough. You're taking everything she asked. I looked at her. Yes. A pause. Then, we were in the middle of, I know. That was the difference. I wasn't interrupting something unfinished. I was redefining how it would be finished. Denise stepped forward again. Arms still crossed. Shouldn't we review it together, she asked. Her tone had changed. Less certain. More careful. I met her eyes. We will, I said. Just not like this. Silence. Grant shifted beside me. A small step closer. Still no touch. Still no interruption. But he stayed aligned. That mattered. The attorney cleared his throat again. We can schedule a formal review, he said. Once Mrs. Whitaker has had time. Mrs. Whitaker. Again. Not Rachel. Not family. A title. A position. Elaine nodded slowly. Yes. She was adjusting. I could see it. Not resisting. Recalculating. Of course, she added. Denise didn't speak. But her posture changed. Slightly less rigid. Still guarded, but aware. I turned toward the door. Not quickly, not slowly. Just moving. And no one stopped me. That was the moment. The irreversible one. Not when they called me inside. Not when they said my name. When I walked out, holding what they couldn't proceed without. Grant followed me. Not immediately. A step behind. Then two. Then beside me again. We reached the front porch. The same place I had stood 20 minutes earlier. The same threshold, but not the same position. He closed the door behind us. Softly. Not hiding anything. Just ending the room. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The air outside felt cooler. Clearer. Defined. I didn't know, he said. His voice low. Steady. Not defensive. Not apologizing. Just placing it. I know, I replied. Silence. Then, I should have come out, he added. I looked at him. You didn't. He nodded. I didn't. No excuse. No expansion. That mattered. Because recognition without defense is rare. And when it happens, you notice. We stood there for another moment. The neighborhood unchanged. Same quiet street. Same woman walking her dog. Same wreath on the door. Everything ordinary. Except the structure had shifted. What does it mean, he asked. I adjusted the folders in my hands. It means your father didn't trust the process, I said. Grant exhaled slowly. Looked back at the house. Then at me. He trusted you. I held his gaze. Yes. That was the part no one had said directly. Not inside. Not yet. But it was clear. Harold had chosen position. Not proximity. Not tradition. Position. I don't think they expected that Grant said. They didn't. Another pause. Then, did you, he asked. I considered it. Then said, number. Not fully. But something in me had recognized the possibility. Even before today. In the way Harold asked questions. In the way he watched conversations. In the way he never corrected me in front of others. But also never corrected me into something smaller. We stepped off the porch, walked toward the car. The lemon bars were still in the back seat. Unmoved. Untouched. I opened the door. Placed the folders carefully beside them. Closed it. Grant leaned against the side of the car. Hands in his pockets. Not restless. Just present. What happens now, he asked. I looked at the house again. Then back at him. We review everything I said. And then we decide what holds. Silence. Then, and if they don't agree, I met his eyes. Then they don't proceed. That landed. Not harsh. Not threatening. Just clear. Because that was the structure now. Not opinion. Not majority. Condition. Grant nodded slowly. He understood. Not everything. But enough. I'm with you, he said. I didn't answer right away. Because that sentence carries weight. Not in words. In repetition. I opened the driver's door. Sat down. He walked around to the other side. Got in. Closed the door. We didn't start the engine immediately. We sat there. Both looking forward. Not speaking. Because something had already been said. Not in conversation. In movement. In position. In who stood where. And who moved when it mattered. I turned the key. The engine started. Quiet. Controlled. We pulled away from the curb. And as the house receded in the rearview mirror, I understood something fully. They hadn't kept me out. They had revealed exactly where they believed I stood. And Harold had already made sure that wasn't the position that would matter. I didn't open the folders that night. That was the second decision. Not because I was avoiding it. Because I wanted to see how the house settled without me. Grant made dinner. Simple. Pasta. Jar sauce. Nothing that required attention. We ate at the kitchen table. No television. No phones. Just quiet. He placed my plate in front of me without asking. Set a glass of water beside it. Small movements. Intentional. I noticed. Not because they were new. Because they were consistent. Consistency is where meaning lives. Around 8, my phone buzzed. Elaine? I let it ring. It stopped. Then a message. We should talk. I read it. Set the phone face down. Grant watched me. Didn't ask. That mattered. A minute later, another message. We need to understand what your father intended. Not what happened. Not what they did. What Harold intended. That shift told me everything. They weren't defending themselves anymore. They were looking for structure. I didn't answer. Not yet. Because answering too quickly returns you to their pace. And pace is power. At 8:17, Denise called. I let it go to voicemail. Her voice came through steady, but tighter than usual. Rachel, we just want clarity. Clarity. Another word that sounds neutral, but carries weight. It means they no longer have it. I didn't replay the message. I didn't need to. At 8:42, the attorney emailed, subject line next steps, attached summary outline. Professional. Measured. Not urgent. That was different. He was aligning with process, not pressure. I opened it. Read the first page. Then closed it. Because I already knew the shape of it. Conditions. Reviews. Sign-offs. Nothing would move without structure now. And structure ran through me. Grant stood at the sink, washing dishes, not stacking them, washing, drying, putting them away, one at a time. That mattered. He wasn't filling time. He was resetting rhythm. I think they're going to keep calling, he said. I nodded. Yes. Do you want me to handle it? I looked at him. Number. A pause. Then, I need to see how they move. He nodded. That answer made sense to him. Because he had started to see it too. Not emotionally. Structurally. The next morning I opened the folders. Spread them across the table. Not rushed. Not overwhelmed. Just present. Harold's handwriting appeared in the margins. Notes. Dates. Small corrections. He had reviewed this himself. Carefully. Deliberately. That mattered. Because it meant this wasn't reactive. It was intentional. There were patterns in the documents. Not obvious, but consistent. Certain assets tied to shared agreement. Certain decisions requiring verification. And one recurring clause. Executor retains final discretion in case of dispute. I read it 3 times. Not because it was unclear. Because it was central. This wasn't about distributing something. It was about managing behavior. Harold hadn't just planned for what they would receive. He had planned for how they would act. And he had built a structure that required someone outside their pattern to hold it. That someone was me. Around 10:15, my phone rang again. Elaine. I answered this time. Not immediately. On the 3rd ring. Rachel. Her voice was steady, but quieter. Yes. A pause. Then, we'd like to meet. Not demand. Not request. Statement. I leaned back in the chair. Looked at the documents. Then out the window. When I asked. Today, if possible. I considered it. Then said, number. Silence. Then, tomorrow, I added. Another pause. Okay. That was the shift. Not negotiation. Adjustment. Here, I said. At our house? A longer pause. That mattered. Because location is position. Of course, she said. We ended the call. I set the phone down. Looked at the table again. At Harold's handwriting. At the structure he had left behind. And I understood something clearly. This wasn't about stepping into power. It was about holding it without changing shape. Because the moment you adjust to fit their structure, you lose the one that was built for you. Grant came into the room. Looked at the papers. Then at me. They're coming here, he asked. Yes. He nodded. No hesitation. No concern? Just alignment. That mattered. Because presence is proven in repetition. Not in one moment. Not at a doorway. In what follows. And now, they would come to us. They arrived 5 minutes early. That told me everything. Elaine never arrives early. She arrives on time. Not late. Not early. On time. Because on time gives her control. Early gives her something else. Awareness. Grant opened the door. Didn't look back at me first. He knew where I would be. At the table. The documents already laid out. Not spread wide. Not hidden. Just present. Elaine stepped in first. Denise behind her. The attorney followed. No one brought anything. No flowers. No food. No gesture. That mattered. This wasn't a visit. It was a meeting. Thank you for having us, Elaine said. I nodded. Sit. No small talk. No transition. Just structure. They took their seats. Not assigned. Chosen. Elaine across from me. Denise to her right. The attorney slightly angled. Grant beside me. Same alignment as the porch. Same position. That mattered. For a moment no one spoke, because the space had already defined the tone. I placed my hand lightly on the top folder. Not claiming. Not performing. Just grounding. I've reviewed the documents, I said. No introduction. No preface. Just start. Elaine nodded. Her posture straight. Hands folded. Waiting. That was new. Harold didn't leave a will, I continued. He left a structure. A small pause. Then, and that structure depends on behavior. Denise shifted slightly. Not interrupting. Just reacting. What does that mean, she asked. I looked at her. It means nothing moves without agreement. And nothing counts as agreement if it's pressured. Silence. The attorney nodded once. Confirming. Not leading. Elaine leaned forward slightly. We've always been able to work things out, she said. I held her gaze. Yes. That's what he didn't trust. That landed. Not loudly. But fully. Denise crossed her arms again. But this time, it didn't hold the same certainty. Are you saying we can't make decisions as a family, she asked. I didn't answer immediately. Because the question needed to settle. Then, I'm saying decisions only count if they're real. A pause. Then, and I determined that. Silence. Grant remained still beside me. Not adding. Not correcting. Just aligned. That mattered more than anything he could say. Elaine exhaled slowly. Not frustration. Adjustment. We didn't expect this, she said. I know. Another pause. Then, but we're willing to move forward. I nodded. That's the only direction available. The attorney opened his folder. Reviewed a page. Then spoke. We should begin with the property, he said. Primary residence? I nodded. Yes. Elaine's hand tightened slightly. Not visible unless you were looking. I was. The house stays, I said. No sale. Denise leaned forward. That's not practical. I looked at her. Practical isn't the condition. Silence. She leaned back again. Not defeated. But recalibrating. Elaine spoke next. We've discussed options, she said. I'm sure you have. But nothing moves until it aligns with the trust. That ended it. Cleanly. Not aggressively. Just closed. The attorney continued. There are also financial reviews required, he said. Certain transfers need clarification. Elaine's eyes shifted. Briefly. Then back. We'll provide whatever is needed, she said. I nodded. That's expected. Denise looked between us. Then said, This feels controlled. I met her gaze. It is? A pause. Then, it was designed that way. Silence. No one argued. Because the structure didn't allow for it. Grant finally spoke. Not to me. To the room. Dad knew how we worked, he said. That was the closest anyone had come to saying it directly. I didn't respond. Because it didn't need confirmation. It was already visible. The meeting continued. Step by step. Clause by clause. No raised voices. No dramatic turns. Just movement. Structured. Measured. By the time we reached the last page, the room felt different. Not lighter. Not heavier. Defined. Elaine closed her hands together again. Looked at me. You've handled this well, she said. I held her gaze. I followed the structure. That was the truth. Not humility. Not deflection. Just fact. Denise didn't speak. But her posture had changed. Less rigid. More aware. The attorney gathered his papers. We'll reconvene next week, he said. I nodded. Yes. They stood. One by one. No one rushed. No one lingered. Elaine paused at the door. Turned back. Rachel. I looked at her. Not away. Not past. At her. We didn't see this before, she said. I considered that. Then said, I know. Not forgiving. Not correcting. Just acknowledging. She nodded. Then left. The door closed. Soft. Controlled. Grant stayed where he was. Didn't move immediately. Then, you didn't change anything, he said. I looked at him. Number. A pause. Then, you held it. I nodded. Yes. That was the difference. Not taking control. Not asserting power. Holding position. Because once something is clear, you don't need to push it. You just don't let it move. The house felt quieter after they left. Not empty. Settled. Like something had found its place and stopped shifting. Grant closed the door and stood there a moment longer than necessary. His hand rested on the knob. Not holding it. Not turning it. Just staying. That was new. Before he would have moved immediately. Filled the space. Said something to soften the air. Now, he let it sit. I remained at the table. The documents still in front of me. Not scattered. Not closed. Exactly as we had left them. Because this wasn't something to put away quickly. It was something to live with clearly. He turned finally. Walked back into the room. Sat down across from me. Not beside me this time. Across. That mattered. It meant he wasn't aligning. He was seeing. I've been thinking about something, he said. I waited. No interruption. No encouragement. Just space. The door, he said. I looked at him. What about it? When Denise told you that you couldn't come in. A pause. I didn't move. That was true. You didn't, I said. He nodded. I saw you. I held his gaze. And I stayed where I was. Another pause. Then, I told myself it wasn't my place to make a scene. I almost smiled. Not because it was new. Because it was familiar. That's how it works, I said. He exhaled. Slow. Then, but it was my place, he added. Yes. Silence. Then, I see that now. That mattered. Not as an apology. As alignment with reality. Because you can't correct what you don't see. We sat there a moment longer. No rush. No need to move past it. Then he said, Dad knew. I looked at the documents. At Harold's handwriting? Yes. He saw it. Yes. And he chose you. I nodded. Not proudly. Not heavily. Just accepting. Yes. Grant leaned back in his chair. Looked toward the window. Then back at me. I don't think anyone expected that. They didn't. Another pause. Then, I didn't either. I met his eyes. I know. That honesty mattered. Not because it fixed anything. Because it removed illusion. He leaned forward again. Placed his hands flat on the table. Not restless. Not searching. Present. I want to be clear about something he said. I waited. I'm not standing beside you because of the documents. A pause. Then, I'm standing beside you because I should have been there already. Silence. That landed differently. Not dramatic. Not emotional. But real. I held his gaze. Then said, then stay there. Simple. Clear. Because intention only matters when it becomes pattern. He nodded. That was enough. Later that evening I walked through the house. Same rooms. Same light. Same quiet. But it felt different now. Not because anything had changed physically. Because I stopped at the kitchen. Looked at the counter. At the place where I had once set things down without thinking, without choosing. Now, every movement felt intentional, defined. I picked up my phone. No new messages, no missed calls. Just stillness. Elaine hadn't followed up. Denise hadn't texted. No one had tried to fill the space. That mattered. Because it meant they understood something too. Not everything, but enough. They were adjusting. Not loudly. Quietly. That's how real change happens. Not through statements. Through absence of old behavior. The next time I saw them, it wasn't about the documents. Not directly. It was at church. Sunday morning. Same pews. Same hymns. Same quiet conversations before service. Elaine saw me first. She didn't hesitate. Didn't look past me. Didn't adjust her path. She walked toward me. "Rachel." Her voice steady. "Good morning." "Good morning." No performance. No softness. Just presence. Denise stood beside her. Not blocking. Not positioning. Just there. Grant stood next to me. Close. Not touching, but aligned. That mattered. We sat together. Not rearranged. Not assigned. Just sat. During the service, I watched nothing in particular. Not the pastor. Not the choir. Just the structure. The way people moved. The way they responded. The way patterns held. And I realized something. Nothing had been fixed. Nothing erased. Nothing undone. But everything had been seen. And once something is seen clearly, it doesn't need to be fought. It just needs to be held. If you've ever been told you don't belong somewhere, not directly, but through doors, through silence, through who moves and who doesn't, pay attention, not to the words, to the structure, to the patterns, to the moment when everything becomes clear, because that's where your position is defined, not by what they say, by what you choose not to accept, and what you choose to hold. That's where dignity returns, quietly, without permission, without announcement, just present.